Anyway, let's move on to package mastery. Package mastery. This is one of the favorite things I like to do because it involves making more money. It involves helping you all realize that a lot of you have the potential to make more money in the business that you're doing, because it benefits everyone if you're making more money, because the more money you're making, the more you can live life, the more you can serve your clients, and you can focus on your job instead of focusing on getting more work. So we are going to go over this. All right, so there are two types of business owners: creatives trying to run a business and business-minded people trying to be creative. Know your strengths and weaknesses. How many here would say they're more creative mindset? How many people would say they're more of a business mindset? Kind of split. The reason I put this is because a lot of times creative people, not pointing out anyone in particular, just kidding. Creative people tend to focus their business on creating a better product, which is great, but they sometimes will neglect certain parts of their business that will actually earn them more money. Take, for example, when Kaye and I first started business together, she actually never answered the phone. And, I'm actually amazed that she stayed in business. I'm not sure how it happened, but she never answered the phone. But then you also know the business-minded people who are so busy running a good business that they're neglecting getting better. And, it's the merging of the two mindsets that's going to allow you to really propel your business, get better, and make a lot more money. All right, packages versus a la carte. Who spends more money? Who does packages? Who does a la carte? Just a la carte, not in addition. Solely a la carte, where you have one option for a film, then they can add other stuff underneath. Okay, a couple of you, a few of you. Did you have a question?
I mean, does the kind of like a hybrid fully into a la carte though? It's like,
I'm more interested in this strictly like a la carte, where there's a lot of people who have one package option, then they could add other stuff like, drone, 4K, stuff like that. But there's really one film length and one package option that they have. Or some are 100% a la carte kind of, and they literally have to choose their hours, choose their film length, and all that stuff. The reason I think packages will always make you more money, with the exception of two markets. The extreme low end of the market does better with a la carte, and the really, really high end market does better with a la carte. And with my illustration about that, and why I think that I can convince you that this is true, if you think about it, think like McDonald's. Their value menu, that's designed for kind of like people with lower incomes who don't have as much expendable income. The 99-cent menu, you pick all the 99-cent items you want. But then you move into the mid-range market, which is the packages. Even McDonald's is back there with packages. They have all the value meals. And I know I'm using McDonald's as an example. This might seem silly or whatnot. But if you look across the board with businesses, you'll actually see that this is kind of across the board, that they all do this. And, you have the value members, value meals, thank you. You have the value meals. And it's because the thing is, the people who do better with a la carte at the bottom, they are purchasing based upon just price. The people who are in the mid-range, which is the majority of the people here, what we're targeting is people who are making purchasing decisions based upon value. And the thing is, they might have a set price that they want to spend, but if you can show them additional value by going higher, they are more apt to spend more money. But then at the really high end, what you'll find is that people who have just a ton of money and they're paying more for the uniqueness of the person they're hiring, more because it's just like someone like Ray Roman, who, they want Ray Roman. They want just someone who's already at the top of the game, exclusivity. They want him. Doing the a la carte at that level seems to be the right choice to kind of maximize how much money you can make per wedding. Because they're not buying based upon value, because they can afford anything that videographer throws at them. It's just a matter of now you presenting it to them and them selecting it. So packages, everyone who I've worked with has always done better with packages. They've made more money. And the great thing about packages too is that if you use my tool that I've created, we can talk more about that later, you can actually get a visualization of where you are in your own market, how you're doing with what you've already sold, and using packages, you can use it as a gauge to see if you're underpriced or overpriced in your market. So huge proponent of packages. I really do believe you can make more money with them. Pricing on your website versus no pricing versus starting at. If you are handling all of your leads and you don't really have time, you need to have more qualified leads that are coming in because maybe you're doing the editing, maybe you're a sole proprietor, you're doing all the editing, but you also have to do all the lead management. You probably want to be more at the starting at or your average price of your client. The reason is because if you do not have a starting price, you're going to get a lot of leads. A lot of them might end up being unqualified leads. People who are, even like 1/5 of what you start at, they're offering. They're saying it's part of their budget. Now the thing is, you can convert people who spend or who have low budgets if you're asking for budgets on like in your forums or whatnot. So if you have a lot of extra time, more time, maybe you're trying to grow your business and you want as many leads as possible, definitely recommend not having them on your website. But if you are already swamped with work, you want to have more qualified leads come in, you might want to consider doing maybe you starting at or maybe your average client. People have different results with each. Does anyone have any questions about when I say kind of like the starting at versus the average price?
So then after you're starting to email with them, then you would like send them like a PDF or whatever that has packages?
Yeah, I do later. Now I'm going to go over that in a little bit.
So you're obviously not a proponent of pricing on the website.
I don't put pricing on my website because I have time to kind of go through all the leads. I converted a bride recently who said on the website that her budget was $2,000. And I sold her an $8,000 package. Now the thing is, when you look at the reason why people would say no or they would have a low budget, there's 3 reasons why that I've identified. Number 1, they literally don't have the money. And there's no matter selling what you do that will change that because they literally can't afford you. 1, they don't value what you do. Those people you typically can't convert because even if you tell them you're 1,000 times better, even if you show them you're 1,000 times better than your competition, they just don't value videography. They put all their money in florals. And so you're really not going to convert them too often because they just don't value you. The third no is the people who are uneducated. The people who maybe read on the Knot or Wedding Wire that average videography pricing is $2,000, and so that's why they put $2,000. But sometimes too, it's like you can see that they put $2,000, but they're getting married at a really expensive wedding venue, and that these are some clues you can get that maybe these people just aren't educated into what good wedding videography is. And so in the process of educating them, of showing them the differences, like if you're more of like the medium end and you show them the difference between you, like your packages are $3,500 and you said $2,000, you say, look, you can find someone for $2,000, but I want to show you what I have to offer at $3,500, and I think you'll see that you see a difference between my quality of work and their quality of work. You're educating them of the difference of what good video can look like. And at the very least, for what I'm doing, for that lead who said $2,000, I'm saying, this is what we have to offer. And if you can find, someone who does what we do at a lower price point, by all means, please go with them. But if you fall in love with our stuff, this is what we have available to you. And what you're doing is you're forcing them to make a decision based upon the quality of your work as opposed to the starting price. For the people and those people generally can afford you, they just haven't been educated as to why they should spend that much on video. Do you have a question?
Yes. If they sign on the contract with you, let's say you got $8,000 contract, what's the percent you ask them upfront so you can save the date?
I right now I'm at like $2,500. I'm not at 50%. I'm just at $2,500. I have not been burned enough with cancellations to really increase it, and we always like the big check to come in like a few weeks before the wedding. So we do $2,500 right now. When we first started, it was like $1,000, and I've just been steadily increasing it. We've had like 2 cancellations over the last 4 years, If you experience a lot of cancellations, I would definitely say 50%. If your starting price is like, $2,000, you want to be at least 50% because you don't want to give people the opportunity to cancel you just because they found someone else. Because if you're $2,000 and your deposit is $200, it's only $200 loss for them to go with someone else who's now offering it for $1,000.
And when you are at the wedding, let's say in the last day, do you ask them the rest of the money at the day?
30 days prior. It is really important. Every once in a while, we'll all have a problem with getting the last paycheck. It is imperative that your deposit, your retainer is what the verbiage we should be using, because a deposit is technically refundable. A retainer is not refundable according to the law. Ask your lawyer, whoever. But your retainer should cover your shooting. So whatever your costs are, like let's say, for example, you charge $4,000 for a wedding. Yeah, and you break it down and say, okay, I want $2,000 for shooting and $2,000 for editing. Your retainer should cover the shooting. And what happens is, if nothing else, your shooting is covered. And even if you don't pay, then you just don't edit. And you wait until that last payment comes in before you start editing their project. That will save you from ever having loss, because if they never pay you, they break up a week later, it's tragic you didn't get that last payment, but at least you got paid for the work you did. What I generally tell people, the deposit is generally non-refundable. If it was within 30 days and they paid the full, I would tell them, I said, look, if I can find another person, if another person inquires and books a date, I will refund your money for you. And that's happened like once, where that's actually happened. I've heard of a lot of people who say that, they never return it and that it's enforceable, or they require like the full payment like 2 months in advance. But just do what works best for your business. Occasionally you'll probably get a little bit burned, but you're just trying to minimize how often it happens and how much of an impact it has. Because, at the end of the day, we all have families, or, we need to put food on the table. So we need to be in the mindset of treating this like a business. It feels good to do stuff for people. And, if you feel led to do that for people, definitely do it. But we also have that mentality that you need to treat it like a business. No other business can you really do stuff like that and get refunds. So
how do you remind the client that the retainer is to expire? How do you tell them?
wait, how do I what?
How do you tell them? Do you send an email or something?
If I'm working with the planner, I let the planner know, because the planner can generally put good heat on them. But again, if it's like 2 weeks before the wedding, like I let them know 30 days out. If they ask me, I'll remind them. But I'm not, especially once we're 2 weeks out, I don't want to keep annoying or keep harassing them about it. I know I'm going to get paid, because the thing is, I've already been paid to film the wedding, and at that point, it's just payment to edit. And I have their footage. They're going to come back to me. And really, the only scenario in which I might lose money is if the couple breaks up within the next couple weeks. Otherwise, they're going to come back, and I let them know do not start editing until we receive payment for the rest. And, I've heard stories of people holding on to footage for years until they get that payment, and I'd probably let them know the footage will be destroyed at some point. But
how do you handle last-minute bookings? Do you ask for the full payment?
Full payment, yep. Full payment for a last-minute booking, 99% of the time.
What if you don't receive it by the day of filming?
I don't show up.
You don't show up. So
If they gave me half of it, I would show up. If they didn't give me any of it, I would let them know that we will not show up unless we receive something. All right, I like to say hard sell versus a soft sell. Stick of gum, like if I'm like, hey Ryan, do you want a stick of gum? He's like, no thanks. It's kind of like a soft sell. I'm like, Ryan, your breath is pretty rank. Do you want to please take a stick of gum? Hard sell. Just wanted to kind of clarify what I mean between a hard sell and a soft sell. Soft sells, the hard sell and a soft sell both have their places with selling. Most of the time it's a soft sell. Sometimes it's going to be more of a hard. Don't sell a product, sell an emotion. When you're talking with a client, and the biggest mistake that we all make is that we talk numbers and packages and deliverables to the client. They're in a routine. They've talked to 3 or 4 other videographers. They're comparing you. They've got numbers. They've got packages. They're comparing you to your competition based off of what you're offering. They're not even looking at the films at this point. They're literally just looking at numbers. You need to get the conversation away from numbers and back onto the emotion of what you're giving them. You know, it's not about like the package. It's about you're selling them, this is what you're going to feel when you receive the film. This is what you're going to feel for a lifetime. This film is what your kids, your grandchildren are going to be watching years from now, long after you're gone. And maybe I don't say that because it's morbid, but you're selling it. Don't stick to the numbers. Don't stick to this. Bring the conversation out of that, because when they're asking about numbers and packages, they've done this to a bunch of people probably. You're probably not the first person inquired. You do not want to be compared to your competition just based upon that. Tell them and say, look, when they email me, they're like, hey, what are your packages? How many get that email? Hey, what are your packages? What do you start at? I bring that conversation away, because the thing is, it breaks them out of that rut, breaks them out of that routine of just looking for those specific things they're looking for. I want to say, hey, like, I'd like to talk to you about your day, because I want to make sure that what we're offering is tailored for your specific needs. Bring them out of the conversation. Can we jump on a phone call to talk about your wedding?
What do you tell them they're going to feel?
Are we talking about the mom?
You said, I like that you said you like to shift from numbers by talking to them, saying to them, this is what you're going to feel when you watch.
I don't say maybe that specifically. I talk about that I sell what we do as an heirloom. I don't sell it as a video. This is what you're going to receive. This is like, the reason or why of what we do is because, when we capture the stuff and the couple starts having kids and they're going to watch this film and they're going to relive this day like you relived it, like you lived it in your eyes, they're going to be able to hear all the people talk. They're going to get to see them as they were in this day. They're going to get to understand personalities. They're going to be able to just feel all the emotions that, because you're bringing the conversation away. Because the thing is, what you're really doing is you're bringing the conversation out of their minds and into their hearts. And once they can start feeling emotions and, and what happens is when they start doing that, they start getting out of the moment. They start looking at it from the future's past perspective, and they're thinking about it. They're probably thinking they're not going to be here anymore, that their grandkids are going to be able to hear their voices. You're just totally shifting the conversation away from what they're expecting into something that is going to make them feel things that they'll eventually be feeling. And the whole point of this is that you're separating yourself from the competition, because all the competition is talking about are numbers and packages. You're engaging them on an emotional level about this wedding and about kind of like the what this is going to mean to them for years to come. Florists can't do this. The caterers can't do this. How funny would it be if the caterer is like, come on, but 30 years from now, you'll be like, man, that was a good cheeseburger. He's just like, it's not the same as actually being able to show a film.
So you're not bringing up your packages right away?
I do it after I emotionally engage them. Because the thing is, I tell them what I do and why I do it. I tell them about how I focus, we love capturing toasts, and we're going to get into the rehearsal dinner in a little bit. The toasts allow you to kind of hear and to kind of hear the things said and capture the things said. I'm talking about a lot about like the day and about what I'm going to capture and how it's going to be viewed for years to come. And no, this is when I get them on the phone. I'm always trying to get them on the phone. If you can get your potential client on the phone, your odds of booking with them go from here to here. I mean, no joke, guys. I mean, if you had a 5% chance of booking them, you just went to at least a 50% chance of booking them if you can get them on the phone. Because most people don't engage with their clients. They send out an email, send out a text, and that's it. If you want to separate yourself from the competition, you need to start getting them on the phone, because even for no other reason than it's harder for someone to say no to you in person or over the phone. But once they've invested time with you, they'll feel some connection with you, unless the phone call really gets janked up. But they will feel some type of connection with you, and it'll be really hard for them to go with someone else over you.
That first
So you say, I'm not talking about that yet. Like, how do you address how you answer that question?
That's the hardest part I got too, because I feel like you said, once I get them on the phone, it's so much easier to sell them. But it's like getting them to that phone call is just.
So my process of what I do, if the email is just like, hey, what are your packages? Here's your date, and here's maybe the venue if I get the venue. The first thing I'm going to do is, I might talk about this in a little bit, but I'm pre-qualifying them from what the information they've given me. I'm looking at the referral. There's a referral. Who did the referral come from? Did it come from a planner that I work with all the time, who I know is going to have higher quality clients? But when I say higher quality, I'm sorry, let me specify higher budget. You know, some planners will have higher budgets than others. It's a pre-qualification I do. What venue are they getting married at or having a reception at? Because we all know some venues are more expensive. Based upon that information, and also what do they say? Do they say just, you know, hey, what are your pricing and packages and are you available on my date? Or do they say, hey, I was looking online and I loved your films and I want to inquire to see if you're available on my wedding date? If they add a little bit of personalization, that tells me that they've watched our films, at the very least, that they've fallen in love with the work that we produce. You'd be surprised if you don't ask how many people are inquiring about packages and pricing without first checking out your work. It's like 90%. The people who are asking about what your pricing are before they check out your work. Like 90%. Get them, and you say, hey, look, so after the pre-qualifications, let's say that they pre-qualified a little bit. They're getting married at a good venue. I will be much more intentional about saying, hey, I would love to jump on a phone call with you to learn more about your wedding day, to hear more about what makes this day special and about how we could be a part of this and capture it and create an amazing wedding film for you.
You're not thinking about pricing.
Nope, nothing. Especially if I've got a little bit of a pre-qualification that, for the most part, they're either going to be, of the 3 no's I talked about, they're either probably going to be don't value you or they aren't educated. You've pretty much qualified out the ones that can't afford you. And so at that point, you have a 50% chance that you'll be able to convince them, sell them on your services, even if they didn't have that high of a budget.
So you're not reaching out, I mean, you're not trying to set up phone calls with the brides that inquire that you've got your contact form, they're like, or something that's.
If it's very generic, no information on the form, I'll usually send out, I'll reply back to the email to fish for a little bit more, and I'll say, hey, so happy for you, congratulations on your upcoming date. Just wanted to ask, have you had a chance to view our films? You know, just want to kind of check to see if we're the style that you're looking for. Or, you know, maybe sometimes you leave off the reception venue. By the way, where are you getting married? Or what do you love most about our films? I'm fishing for some sort of a qualification. Some of the times they'll go, oh yeah, we loved your work, we saw a whole bunch of films, that's why we're asking. Great, let's jump on a phone call, leads back into the track. If they say, no, well, we haven't seen any of your work, then I will direct them to my work and say, because the thing is, it keeps coming back to the point where I want people to say no to my work, not my pricing. Because the people who are saying no to your work, if your work is great, if it communicates a lot to the client, it's going to be a lot harder for them to say no to that. And what's happening is you're making them draw a comparison between you and someone else who might be cheaper. Because if you're offering them $3,000, someone else at $1,500, you'll be like, well, okay, well, I guess we should check out the work. We didn't realize not all of it might be equal. Then they go back to the other person. They love your stuff way more than the other person's. Then they're at least saying yes or no to you based upon your work. And that's what you want people to do. You don't want people to say yes or no based on just pricing and packages. Get away from that whole conversation. If you just send pricing and packages, unless it's a planner that you work with all the time, a lot of times planners will say, hey, what's your current packaging and pricing? I will send it right to them because I know they're already going to be trying to promote me and sell me. Any other lead, I stay away. That's why I don't put pricing and packages on a website. I don't send it off to the email initially unless it's a super, super, super unqualified lead and I just want to reply back to them because I pretty much know that they're not going to. There's some I know, I can tell. But otherwise, I always draw the conversation back to a phone call, qualifying or a phone call, and then I'm making them say no to my work and not the pricing. Because once you've seen your work, even if they couldn't afford you at first, if they love it, they will make an exception and they'll find other room in the budget because they'll have to have you. And again, 90% of brides, maybe not 90, a large percent are not actually viewing films before they contact you. That's why you're steering the conversation. You're steering it into a place where they're qualifying you, they're checking out your work, making them say no to your work and not your pricing.
During that conversation over the phone, are you talking about pricing at all, or do you wait and then send them an email?
I wait till the end. I'll let them know. I go back and forth. Sometimes once we start going, I'll let them know. I've qualified them a little bit. I've engaged with them. I'll let them know our starting rates to say, for your wedding, maybe not for your wedding, but our starting packages begin here. And what I'd love to do is send you a quote for our services so you can kind of look at the different options. Then at that point they have, you could tell sometimes you just get like the silence. They're like, oh, I've engaged. I mean, she's probably heard it. I've engaged with people for 45 minutes to an hour before I've told them my pricing, and then I just get this. Oh my God, I had no idea you were so expensive. Or just something like that, because they had no idea that we were whatever. So be careful about how much time you invest. That's why it's good to have that pre-qualification before you invest too much time with them. But I would definitely drop your do your spiel 10, 15 minutes, segue into making sure that they understand that emotional connection you're making, segue into your starting price, and just maybe list starting price, and then, hey, could I send you a quote? And as soon as you send them a quote, I use 17 hats. They can go directly into that quote, and they can actually book me without me any other intervention. They can go ahead and book me, put the retainer down, done. It's nice to put that in their possession, because it can help with some clients who are on the edge. If they have two people, one who they have a contract that they can book, one that they can't, they may just go with you just because they can. One more, we'll come back. All right. Okay.
I was just gonna quick clarification. So if they put a decent amount of information on your form, let's say to where you feel like they might be pre-qualified, so they put the venue, they put, maybe they put a little information about their story, or they said, hey, we're getting married here, such and such. Would you then, in your first email response, are you asking them for a phone call, or are you starting a conversation?
Yeah, I go right into wanting to do a phone call.
Okay.
I'm always trying to, because especially those people sound like they're excited to work with you, and you're taking them from here to here, as opposed to from here to here. So you're anytime you want to go from here up, and any one of those touches from pre-qualifying them to getting them on the phone call, engaging with them emotionally, it's just going to be one step closer to kind of getting that booking.
Okay. And do you do like a phone call or meeting in person?
I don't really meet in person much anymore. It was a huge waste of time. I mean, we live like 45 minutes away from where most people want to meet. And I mean, I will make some exceptions for some planners, but that's only because they're bringing me a great potential client. Last person I met with actually booked us for like a $15,000 package. So it was worth my time to meet them in the city. But for most other leads, I direct them to over the phone. Or if they would like to come locally to us, I will meet with them.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around that first email, because I want to make sure that I'm not being too abrupt with them. Is it pretty short email? You find that people are not reading it, you make it much longer? Or are you just saying,
fairly short.
Let's meet them, or let's talk on the phone?
Fairly short. It's more important to be quick than it is to be thorough, or long, I should say. Be quick. Let me come back to that in a second. But yeah, it's pretty quick. Congratulations to your upcoming wedding. We are available for your date. And then I segue into wherever I want to go. Just out of curiosity, have you had a chance to see some of our work and kind of direct back to that, and then start that chain upwards?
For every booking, how many of these phone calls do you think you have with people who just...
I'm sorry, for every
everyone that you book, how many phone calls are you actually having? Because it sounds like you're having a lot of phone calls, and then it may not go through. Like they may not book you after they hear your conversation.
So how many phone calls turn into bookings?
Well, I'm just wondering like, what's your, I guess, the ratio? Like, how do you feel like you're spending a lot of time on the phone that doesn't end up in bookings?
Once I get people on the phone, I would say I have at least a 50% chance of booking them. If I engage with them for 30 minutes, that probably goes up to like 75, 90% of a chance of booking them. So, I mean, if you're finding yourself on too many phone calls and not enough of them are booking, maybe just try a little bit more with the pre-qualifying them before you jump on that phone call, or just shorten your phone call so you're not investing as much time. Everything you offer is a product worth money to your clients. Just wanted to reinforce this. We talked about this the first day about, things like raw footage. Don't just give raw footage away. It's got some sort of value. Even if you charge $100 for raw footage, don't just give it away. Anything you do to your clients is worth money because of your time involved. Don't be bullied by the client saying, oh, just do this for me. Be specific with what you have in your contracts and value your time and anything that the client asks you to do. We're not talking about like if there's like a minor edit that needs to be made on the film, but don't just allow them to say, hey, well, if you have this footage, just give it to me. If you have this, just give it to me. Can you do this for me also? Value your time and charge for what you do. You're an artist creating a work of art. The client has no claim of anything you produce just because you were paid to film or photograph. This goes for raw footage, 4K upgrades, stock edits, etc. They have no actual copyright claim of anything you produce. It's not theirs, it's yours. It's called like a work for hire. And my cord is going all weird. It's called a work for hire. So if they pay you to produce something, the only difference is if you're paid by the company, you have some sort of contract that states that anything you produce while working for that company is owned by that company. For you, for your own business, anything you produce, even though you are paid by the client, is your copyright. You own it. They have no stake in it. Anything you give them is what you're giving them based upon the contract. So just wanted to throw that out there so we all knew. A lot of people talk about copyrights, joint copyrights. I swear there's an article floating out there somewhere on the Knot or Wedding Wire that's telling all their clients that all the films should be joint copyright or sole copyright to the client. Ignore all that. It's just like you own the copyright, and the only differences are if you're doing some sort of an NDA, anything contractual where you have to do an NDA for the client or whatnot. Don't be so easy to give up copyright. If they're forcing you to do it, charge something for it. Because if you give up copyright, legally you do not have permission to post it on your own website. And it's worth noting. I mean, it's one thing to do joint copyright. If you do joint copyright, they have actual permission to sell it. They can sell it to your competitor. They could sell the raw footage to your competitor. They can create it and edit and use it to promote their own wedding business. That's why copyright is so important. And I just want to encourage you all to kind of treat it as such.
Do you have an NDA fee?
Yeah, I just make it up as I go along, whatever I feel like. I usually try to do it to kind of discourage them, but. All right, before you begin, know your market, know your competition, price yourself in your market. It's just, if you're asking yourself how much you should cost or how much your starting price should be, if you're just starting off your business, figure out who your competition is, figure out how does your product compare to theirs, just as a baseline for starting out. And then that's how you price yourself for your market. Don't just make it an arbitrary number because someone in the Facebook group told you that you're worth $8,000. If you start off at a number you feel is comparable to your competition, and then you can go up or down from there compared to, relative to how many leads you're getting and how many bookings you need or are getting.
Any secrets to like find out people's prices, or you just like going over them like, hi, how much do you charge?
I mean, I would never kind of be weird about it and email them pretending to be a client. A lot of times you can just, if you're friendly with them, you can probably just ask what's their approximate, especially if they're comparable. Having relationships with other videographers to kind of share leads back and forth is a great tool to have. Sharing leads with people who are kind of in your level and to have a product similar to you is super important. And so at that point, then you know what their starting pricing is, because then you're referring them to other your clients.
That's the most difficult thing for me. And again, I don't have a lot of those relationships. And I can go online and they might have starting prices. And then what they show is really amazing, but what they show is not what the starting price was. So I have no idea. They say they're a $1,500 wedding videographer, but I don't know what they're doing.
The quality should be similar though. the product, even for us, I mean, the quality for our bottom package and our top packages can be very similar. The big difference is hours of coverage, the length of the film, other sort of deliverables, but you should be able to tell by the quality of their film where they're at. I like 3 tiers generally, and the reason is just because there's a lot of psychology that goes into the packages and the tiers and stuff like that. There is a segment of people who will always buy the bottom tier. There's a segment of people who will always buy the top. The majority of people, most people that you run into on a psychological level will be drawn to the middle. And that's how you package everything. You're drawing people towards your middle package, because most people consider themselves, mostly economical. Like they're not, they don't splurge a lot, but they also like to pride themselves as being also better than the bottom. So, and most of us probably do the same. If you're looking at buying a car, for the most of us, we're probably gravitating towards the middle trim. Maybe unless we're really reaching and we want that, brand new Mercedes, and we'll get the base trim just because it's a Mercedes. But for most cars we're looking at the middle trim. It's just kind of the psychology of how we want to purchase. Most people are like that. 4 tiers I put in here. I'm currently in a 4-tier package system. The reason is because we're in a weird place where we are kind of on the teetering edge of getting a lot of higher quality of clients, but we don't have enough of them to only do that. So we have to have people at our baseline price point of $5,500 is where our introductory price is. We still get a bunch of clients coming in there, eventually gravitating towards one of our middle packages. And first we had 3 packages that went from $5,500 all the way up to our top package. And I realized I was losing people in the middle, because I had $5,500, $9,000, and like $12,000. And what was happening is I was losing a lot of people because they wanted more than the 55, but not as much as the 9. And so they were ending up just getting a 55 because they didn't want to spend 9. So then I ended up going 55, 75, like 9,000 or something, and then higher. And then having that 4 packages was great for my market, because that really was able to kind of get the people who into a price point that they felt comfortable with, where I was booking enough weddings, but not losing people with trying to get them with too big of a jump between my packages.
Would you apply the same philosophy on the other end of the spectrum, 4-tier, if you're going from kind of lower, trying to get more on the
I would say the 4 tiers really, everything I've seen the 4 tiers only for people who are teetering on the high end market, because you still need a baseline of how many weddings you need to be full-time and be in booking. We still book around 20, 22 weddings a year. If we only started at like 8,000 or 9,000 and above, we'd probably book like a dozen weddings, not 20. And so it just wouldn't be enough to kind of fill our year up. But usually the kind of like the bottom mid-range 3 packages would suffice. And it'd be really rare that you're attracting $1,000 clients and $4,000 or $5,000 clients, because if you're attracting $4,000 or $5,000 clients, you should be starting at 1,000. So you're kind of like the gap between your lowest and highest is going to be a lot thinner than where we're currently at now, where it has to be a lot wider to kind of, because we're attracting from 2 different clienteles.
What you would include in your base package?
I'll pass it out.
Do you want me to pass them out now, or is it with that?
No, I'll pass.
Okay.
I've got it up in here somewhere.
Okay.
Typically, you want to point the majority of people to your middle tier. We talked about that a second ago, which is basic psychology. The middle, when you're structuring your packages, you want people to gravitate towards the middle tier. What that means is if you don't want to include too much in your bottom, so that way people are like, so a lot of the mistakes I see when people make packages is that they include too much in the bottom, and their middle and top tiers are kind of just like minor improvements, but they're asking for big price jumps. You can tell, I've talked about it before, I have a spreadsheet which can actually track this stuff and help you figure out if you're priced accordingly, but in your business, you want the majority of the people, maybe 60%, 50-60% booking your middle package. If too many people are booking your bottom package, it means one of 2 things. It either means you're giving too much away in your bottom package, or it means that you're moderately overpriced. If everyone is booking your highest package, that could mean that that could just mean that there's not enough attraction to the middle package. Maybe you're giving away too much in your top package, and you're also a little bit underpriced. Did I say all that right?
I don't know, I'm sorry.
So using it as gauges, if you're booking too many of your bottom or too many of your top, could be indications that you're not priced accordingly. You want people gravitating towards your middle. That's when you know you're hitting the most success. We'll go into a little bit more of that later. Always make sure that the value is increased when you move up packages. There has to be value increase. Like I said, a lot of times people do very small incremental improvements from their bottom to the middle to the top. What I like to do, create your middle package at the price that you'd be happy with, right? Strip stuff away from there, and that's your bottom package. Add some stuff in there that isn't really essential, and then make that your top package. And then there should be an obvious step up. And for those of you who have gotten the ticket for this workshop, which we do an hour consultation, we will work with you kind of independently to talk about that, to kind of drill down more into that to see if it's correct. But it always should be, just remember, it always should be pointing towards the middle package. Are you listing everything a package contains? It's important. If you're putting down your packages and there's stuff you're giving a client but you're not putting down in the sheet, it doesn't have as high a perceived value to the client. So if you're giving them something like 4K, if that's included, put that in there, because they might be comparing you to someone who offers 4K as an add-on, but if your 4K is included, you see more of a value to them. If you're offering drones, put it in. If you're doing this, put it in. Don't get too crazy, but just kind of like the major things to let them know that what's included.
Offering 4K, no question, but that means the final deliverable is in 4K, correct?
Preferably shot in 4K as well.
Well, that's my dumb question. So if I want to shoot something, I'm having to shoot at 60 frames per second, 1080, I can't sell 4K film.
In early 2018, we made the decision to shoot everything in 4K. Then I was coming back to all the clients and selling them a 4K upgrade. You can't sell them the upgrade if you don't shoot it in 4K. So don't wait for the sale to shoot it in 4K. If you're offering 4K as an add-on, do a soft sell for 4K before the wedding. Soft sell means you present it. After the wedding, let them know, hey, we can give this to you in 4K, which is 4 times the detail. It'll be $300, whatever it is, to increase. But you're delivering the 1080.
But if my camera will not shoot 60 frames per second in 4K, then I can have no slow motion.
Right.
If I'm going to sell it.
So if that's important to your business, you need to get a camera that can do 4K 60.
Just get with the 1DX Mark II.
I think Ryan is selling this.
I'm selling 1DX Mark II.
It's worth it, though. I'm telling you, in the beginning of 2018, we made the jump, and Kaye wasn't 100% on board at the time, but we made probably like $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 in 2018 just selling 4K add-ons, which paid for the majority of the upgrades we did. And so if you do it correct, but the thing is, that was also in 2018. What you're going to run into is if you start trying to do that now, but your competitors have already adapted to 4K, then it could look a little weird if your competitors are all giving it away, but you're not. And really just comes back down to, I'm not just advocating you give it for free, but it also might be a point in time in which 4K is expected. At some point in the past, when we went from SD to full HD, people were adding on full HD as an add-on. It was an upgrade. But at some point, it was just assumed that you needed to be in full HD to be competitive. There's some things that are like that you just kind of have to give. And we ended up just starting to give, including the drone footage as part of the packages. And the reason why is because I increased the price point of all of our packages and threw drones in, because I didn't want to offer a discount if I didn't fly. I didn't want to have to return money if for some reason I couldn't fly the drone, whether or otherwise. It's just a dicey situation. People could argue that you paid for the drone pilot to be there. I just don't want to get into that. I can fly if I can. If not, there's no refund, but best effort instead of charging additional for it. That was just one thing that we decided we would do.
So that's even in the base package.
It's in the base package. but we increase the value of, or the price point of our base package to include it in. If you don't want to do it, don't include it. Same day edits, not looking at anyone. Funny story. One time I helped, before I was part of Kaye's business full time, I helped her out when she did a same day edit, and I was helping her run cards back and forth with her shooters. And she probably lost 15 years of her life on this edit. And then when it finally came down to it, she got it done in the nick of time. I went to the groom. I'm like, we're ready. He's like, don't worry about it. We're just gonna go on without it.
Well, now it's a little bit different of a scenario because we were experimenting with it. So we either gave it really discounted. I can't remember if it was discounted or it can't be free because we had to pay for extra shooters. But because we discounted it, I think they valued it less, and they're just like, whatever.
I had to talk with the groom. We played it.
But yeah, I cried. I cried when I found out he didn't want to play it, so he went and talked to the groom.
But it is important. If there's something that you're offering that you don't like to do, don't offer it, because it'll either don't offer it or price it at a point that eventually you'll just be like, we have a price for same day edits, I'm sure. Probably starting at about $40K, but if they want to pay $40K, we'll do it. If you are shooting the weddings, selling yourself as being there is valued by the client. If you're, it's hard if you're in a part of a studio, but if you're part of more of a boutique, make sure you let people know that you are going to be there. I know Ray Roman used to talk about how when he first started realizing that this was important, he would actually add himself as a line item and charge more for himself, even though he just intended on being at the weddings anyway. He found out that people would pay more money if he was guaranteed to be there. All that to say, when you're putting your list of deliverables or what you're offering to your client, it has a higher perceived value if you're listing that you're going to be there if you intend on being there. Because it's saying, the owner of the company, the artist themselves is going to be there. High value. Upsells to packages. Limit the amount of upsells you present at the time of booking. I do a soft upsell on a few things, but not many. And the reason is because the big thing that you were focusing on for when you're trying to sell stuff to your clients before the wedding is coverage. Focus on coverage, coverage, coverage. The reason is, with more coverage, you can offer more additional upsells of edits after the film. If you're focusing your effort on doing additional edits, you're burning through whatever money they might have. And let's say you offer, instead of additional coverage, a doc edit for an additional $500. But if you had done instead additional coverage of 2 hours, and after the wedding, 2 hours for $500, then after the wedding, you can come back and say, hey, I've got a doc edit for $500 as well. You made $1,000 as opposed to $500. And you want to focus on coverage as the upsell that you're pushing ahead of the time. If they only have you booked for 8 hours and you really need 10, you need to let them know that. You need to kind of push for that to happen, because more coverage will oftentimes lead to more money after the fact in some way, form, or shape or form. Do a hard sell for upsells after the feature's dropped. So get this. You have doc edits you like to do that are popular. Let's say you charge $500 to $1,000 for popular doc edits. You wait until after the main feature film is given to them because they're hungry for more. They're in love with your film. They can't watch it enough times. They just want more and more content. Hey, I've got a doc edit. You just watch the 10-minute feature. This doc edit will be 2 hours long and give you all the footage of the day that you haven't seen. They will eat it up. And that is your highest chance probability of selling that doc edit right after you drop the feature film. So don't focus on that film before you do the wedding. Focus on it after the feature is dropped.
So you shouldn't include doc edits in your middle.
I'm not saying that, but if you're going to be doing any pushes for additional edits or additional things that you sell, wait until after the time. Having a doc in your edit might be a whole different story. I would probably argue that most doc edits, unless it's just the ceremony, aren't really valued high by the client. You can drop a lot of that stuff, and you probably would still book just as many weddings. It's actually kind of interesting. You stop offering something. If you want to stop offering something, just take it out. See how many people complain. If they complain, you could put it back in. But if they don't complain, you just saved yourself some editing, and you now have an opportunity for an upsell that was already included. Like formal dances, if you charge $250 for that, take it out of the package. And if they say something, they say, hey, you know, my cousin hired you and she got the formal dances at the same price, you could add it back in. Chances are they won't say anything, but then after the wedding, you could be like, hey, we got formal dances for $250. This way you can kind of relive those dances. Then it's a higher chance that you can make more money selling it then. I will say this too is a lot of the things we offer on our packages are things that the clients don't care about. Oops. So, I mean, experiment with what you're including. They mostly care about coverage and the length of the film. Sometimes sort of a social media teaser.
So outside of the dances and toasts and the ceremony, do you find yourself with other stuff from the day that you can put together for a doc edit when you're just shooting cinematically?
I mean, we always make sure we have a safe shot because we don't make any guarantees of what doc edits are going to look like. I mean, in the past, I've called them doc edits versus raw footage edits. Documentary edits would be more of like, it's a little bit more polished. You have multiple cameras. It's from A to B time-wise. And there's no lag of time. A raw footage edit would be more of kind of like all the usable footage is kind of like stitched together in a film that you can watch as opposed to like 1,000 clips on a computer.
I'm always finding like, maybe with bridal prep is supposed to speed, and I might be getting my creative shot outside of those like super creative.
Just make sure your camera's rolling a little bit. Just if you want to start pushing it, you might need to leave your camera rolling just a little bit longer. If you're just going in for literally 3 seconds here, 3 seconds there, you might not be able to sell it. But for preps, but you'll know. I mean, what you can just do is when you're editing for your film, take all of your bridal prep footage, put it on a timeline, and see how much you're actually shooting. It might surprise you. And it's not only about what you're seeing. For bridal prep especially, it's about what you're hearing. So many like nuances of things that are said that the bride is not aware of that you can hear coming off of your camera mic that is a lot of gold for the clients. Sometimes. Has the bride gained weight? Do you have a question or?
I have a question. I know you're saying it's better to sell from the back end, but if a client is asking on the front end, hey, along with the cinematic edit, do you have they would refer to it as a doc edit, they would probably say, can we get the full ceremony or something? Are you pricing them differently because you know?
No, I'm not pricing them differently, but I don't discount ahead of the wedding, generally. So when I give them a quote for what they're asking for, I'll do what I call the soft sell. On their quote, they have an option of adding a few things in that I select into their wedding package that are all full priced. And there might be a doc edit in there. There might be a couple of other things. And occasionally people select them and surprise me and add on the cost of the package by $1,000, $2,000. A lot of times they don't. After the wedding, I do the harder sells in which I'm telling them that, hey, would you like a doc? Now that we've given you everything, we've got this documentary edit. These are the types of things available. And then sometimes if they're interested in multiple things, I'll kind of bundle them together a little bit. I'm interested in getting the maximum possible sale while still kind of getting the minimum amount of money that I want to make with selling those types of things.
So you mentioned doing the soft sell, particularly the 4K footage I'm interested in because I'm shooting in 4K. Now, I'll go back and forth sometimes, just if I'm rolling for a long time, go to 10 years. But when you do the soft sell, I can understand selling it before the wedding, saying, hey, 4K, all that. But after, if you're selling, they would be like, oh, so you shot it in 4K.
Nobody's ever asked me that, and I know what you're saying. Nobody's ever said, hey, you shot it in 4K. How, so just, it all comes back to value what you do. I mean, if they really want to press in, if they really press into me, I will let them know. I invested in $20,000 in new cameras this year to have that capability of 4K. All I'm asking is if you want the 4K, that's going in towards the value. And if you don't get the 4K, you're still getting the benefit of me having gotten better cameras because it's still going to look better. I've never had anyone really fight me on that, but that's what I would say if they did. Sales call, psychology, pricing on your website versus... Did we go over this? A little bit of a repeat. How to identify a qualified lead, we went over. Older people do better on the phone. 30s and 40s do better over email. Younger people respond best to text. If I put on my contact form, how do you want to talk? Phone, text, or email? Most people just put it as email. Some people put it as text. And even if they don't put it as text, a lot of times what I'll do, especially if I'm out and about, I'll send them a quick text, let them know, hey, this is John with Jonathan and Kaye. Just want to let you know we're available for your wedding date. And a lot of times I can start talking to them then. I can start possibly getting them on a phone call. It starts the ball rolling. A lot of people actually respond over text. I've booked weddings over text. It's definitely a useful tool to use. Oh, and definitely older people, though, they like to talk on the phone. If you try to text them, you probably won't get a response back. Before sending your packages, make sure the client has first seen your work. We talked about that. Sales call strategies. Getting a potential client on a call will greatly increase your chances of booking. Personality profiling the client, introverted versus extroverted tactics. I am huge into personality testing. I've done all the personality tests. Anyone else, like Myers-Briggs, like Personality Plus, anything like that? Do y'all know basic introverted versus extroverted? It might not be what you think. An introverted individual, they exert energy by being in public. So after being in public too long, they've exerted all their energy. They just want to go home and basically withdraw from the world. If you're introverted, a lot of creatives are introverted. If you ever, after a wedding, you just don't feel like talking to anyone at the end of the wedding, you just want to go home, just be unsocial and just recharge. Extroverted people actually get energy from being in social situations. They get energy from it. They lose energy by being alone. So that's why they just are always trying to get back into stuff. Anyway, what that has to do with anything is what I found is that introverted people are more interested in just kind of like the facts. They're not up for idle chit chat. They don't want to talk about the bride's dress, about the location. Some clients, if I let them, I could talk to them for 3 hours about stuff. And those clients who like to talk, I will talk about whatever kind of comes up, then guide the conversation back after a while. And then once they've had that connection with you, they like you, and they generally want to do business with you. Introverted people are tougher to kind of do business with because they're not up for kind of like talking stories and doing all this stuff. They kind of just want the facts. Just give them your spiel, leave it on the table, and kind of let them make a decision. So when I'm dealing with people, I kind of profile them to see what they're going to respond best to. And if I feel like they're kind of more of like driven on just like basic stuff, I don't try to expound the conversation. I don't try to, talk about all these things like we were talking about before. I'm a little more straightforward with them, and I'll still try to make that emotional connection, but I'll much quicker come back to this is what we offer, this is what you're going to get, and I'll have a lot more success with those people going that way. Get the client engaged about their wedding details. The more that they will talk about the wedding details, the more of a connection will be made between you guys, the higher the chance they'll book. Offer a solution. A lot of times just listening to people, you'll find out that they have a problem. And the problem, sometimes the problem is just that they need wedding coverage. You're offering a solution. You're offering them, we're going to handle everything. You don't have to think about it. We're going to handle everything. You enjoy your day. We're going to get you a great film. By just offering a solution, I mean come across as someone who's going to, solve these problems, not add to their problems, who's not going to need a lot of micromanagement, who's just going to operate by themselves and give great stuff. Just kind of like a mindset that you're solving their problems and not trying to integrate them. That's why it's best on a sales call. Don't talk about too many logistics. Don't talk about necessarily the how you're doing things. So I'm going to need this. I'm going to need that. That's not offering a solution. That's integrating more problems. Just kind of, just focus on that. The logistics come after the sale's been made. Ask to send a quote over. It's always a great way to end a conversation. Raising pricing, working less. If you're happy with your income, you could possibly reduce deliverables if you don't want to raise pricing. This will help you continue to earn what you're earning and working less. Like we talked about before, if you're happy with everything, if you're offering an 8-minute film, maybe you can offer a 6. If you're offering 3 doc edits with your final deliverable, maybe offer 1 or 2. start reducing your deliverables. You can probably keep your pricing where you're at, and you'll work less and still earn the same amount of money. This is kind of in talks with about raising. There's different strategies on making more money. Some of it has to do with making more money. Some of it is revolving more about creating more time. And you can use that time to enjoy life or make more money. Another strategy for raising your pricing, because with the first strategy, you're not actually raising your pricing, but if you find that you're booking up for the year, you can probably just reduce what you're offering and you'll still book as many weddings. You'll just be happy if you're working less. We've done it. I don't know where she went. We've done it 20 times where we just reduce their deliverables and people don't skip a beat, they still book. The second strategy to raising your pricing or working less, just to raise your pricing and work the same. Just take all of your packages, everything up $100 or $200. You're charging more, you've already booked a lot of weddings for next year, you feel comfortable and you feel confident that you're gonna book up the next year. So just raise by a couple $100 just to tweak it out. What I like to refer to is the TikTok methodology about about earning more money in your business. By this, I mean, so what we'll do is we're at a price point, we want to be earning more money. So the first thing I do is when I want to be earning more money is I start reducing deliverables. I charge the same amount of money, I reduce deliverables. What that does is on one hand, we could just work less and be happy. On the other hand, we can take the deliverables we just took out and then sell it to them after the fact. If we were offering a ceremony edit for free as part of the package, take it out of the package and sell it to them for another $250 after the wedding. This will help you earn more money based upon the same amount of work that you were previously doing. Then the talk is after you've taken those deliverables out, then you just raise all of your packages and put the deliverables back in. So from where you started to where you are now, you're now charging maybe $300 or $400 more. So I've used this since we've been charging $1,500. So just to kind of reiterate, a great strategy for raising your pricing, we've done this since we've charged $1,500, is if I take my packages, take stuff out and charge the same, then I put it back in and raise the pricing. So then from where I started, it's the same deliverables, but now I'm charging more. And so then again, I take it out, still charge the same. Then I put it back in and charge more. And this allows you to just continually raise your pricing, work less, earn more money.
Just an average period of time between, are we talking 6 months? Is that every year?
At one point we were doing it 3 times a year, 4 times a year. We've pretty much settled down to maybe once a year now. But if you're finding that you're booking up a lot, and we can go over this later about how you can tell when you're at a good place booking-wise. If you're ahead of where you need to be with booking, you can be more aggressive with it. If I generally like to say you want to be 1/3 booked by New Year's Eve. So now that it's December, do y'all know how many weddings you want to have booked for next year? So if you want to have 20 weddings booked for next year, my recommendation or what I found is that you want to be at 1/3 booked for next year. So if you want 20, and if you're for 2020, and you're currently at about 6 or 7, it means you're right on track. If you have more than 6 or 7 booked for next year and you want 20, you're ahead of the game. Probably means you can raise your pricing and still get to that 20 level. If you want to be at 20 and you're currently only booked at 2 or 3, you might be a little bit overpriced, or you might not be getting enough leads, at which point that you might need to reduce your pricing. You might need to reduce your pricing a little bit. So that's kind of the gauge, and I forgot how I got there, but does that answer your question? Never discount your packages, but you can reduce your price if you reduce deliverables or coverage. More often than not, you can get back to where you wanted to be by the wedding. This is really important, especially when working with planners. If you do it for them once, they will come back asking for it again. Hold your ground. Example, let's say January is really light, and a planner comes to you and says, hey, I've got a wedding for you, but they want to spend $1,000 less than your bottom package. You want the work, you could use the money, and you're saying, a lot of people's gut reaction is, okay, fine, I'll do it for $1,000 less. Instead, tell the planner you're going to create a custom package for them. Let's say you wanted to charge them $3,500, but they want to spend $2,500. Don't just discount. Take stuff out of your package. Even if it's minute, take an hour out. Take a minute of the film out. Take some sort of deliverable out of that price. And what happens is, especially if let's say you're at 10 hours of coverage, you go down to 8, or you're 8 and now you're at 7. A lot of times, by the time they actually get to the wedding, you can sell that stuff back to them and get exactly to that $3,500 mark that you wanted to be at to begin with. But you can't do that if you just discount. So it's a good strategy to getting, even when people are asking for a discount, if you need the work, just reduce your deliverables also when you reduce your price. Does that kind of make sense?
Question though, how you suggested something along the lines yesterday is shoot the kind of wedding this year you want to charge for next year, so you really want to kind of amp up your game this year so you can charge more for it. So to do that, you might end up, for example, they'll pay you for 8 hours of coverage, but you might show up an hour early and stay an hour late and get more. Is that discounting your package?
Just doing it and not announcing it. Might show up early, and it is appreciated by them. A lot of times you might not even notice. It might also mean that you're showing up early just to get some drone shots, or showing up early just to handle tough logistics. A lot of that is just going to be about the mindset of how much effort you're going to put into the film. It's not as much about kind of like how many hours of coverage, but it's more that just like, I'm going to come at this with 100%. I'm going to try really, really hard, in spite of the fact that that all these people are kind of devaluing me by not offering me as much money as I want to charge, because you want to create the product that's going to attract the people who are going to pay that much. Does that kind of make sense? Many people have a base price they will hire someone for, but go above that once they have committed to someone. What this is saying is, let's say that they come to you, they want to get your bottom package, and you know that they need more. Sometimes people just are like, I want to spend $4,500, or I want to spend $3,500 on a wedding film. After they've already spent the $3,500, they were adamant about $3,500. A lot of times they just wanted their wedding film at $3,500, but they'll still spend a lot more money. They just wanted the buy-in to be at that price. We'll do that with cars. I want to buy a car for $25,000. You find a car for $25,000, but then you spend another $5,000 in upgrades on it. So even though you went in wanting to spend $25,000, you'll end up spending $30,000. It's just a psychology thing that a lot of people go into a wedding doing that. So even if they were adamant about a price point, a lot of times you can still bring them up because the base price you met them at that base price they wanted to spend. All right, so I was going to pass out a copy of the packages. Yeah.
So you're saying if they come in on your base price, but you know going into it, that's not going to be the only coverage that they need.
Wait, say it one more time.
If they come in on your base price, right, just because they're adamant about that it was the coverage that they need, but you're in your mind like saying, okay, they'll probably pay for it later. If they don't, then you just kind of roll with the punches as far as like the.
I mean, if I'm just hoping that if we're talking about what we were talking about before, where let's say it's a wedding that you know is going to be the next wedding that you're using to promote yourself, maybe you want to put in more effort. If it's just any other wedding, I wouldn't show up unless they're paying for it. Just wanted to show you. I lost the clicker. What happened to it? Oh, hidden in plain sight. All right, I wanted to give you a copy of the packages we offer, just to kind of give you, show you. It's more of kind of to show you how we've structured things and how we use package progression. Thank you. Package progression to kind of lead people to where I want them to spend. And really, for us, what it came down to is rehearsal dinner coverage with the teaser. That's what most of our clients want. So I lead everything towards there. Just an idea for you guys to kind of see and get a feel for. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, right off the bat, I noticed you say wedding day coverage up to this amount of hours. Is that so that way they can't try to, because I've had this happen to me, they're like, well, we have you for this many hours, but we don't need that much, so if we get something else instead.
I won't reduce the price, even if they ask me to, for the base package. Yeah, I won't reduce the price up to. In a perfect world, if they only needed 6 hours, we might leave in 6. I don't think that's ever really happened.
I'm just asking like the wording you put, if you put it that way instead of just saying like 8 hours for that?
It was more because at the time, when we had up to like 12 hours of coverage. Some people don't need 12 hours of coverage. It's just letting them know that they're not getting a discount. They don't use the full amount. And in a perfect world, it lets them know that we're deciding how many hours we want to use. And they don't just get 10 or 12 hours of coverage. We decide the amount of coverage they get. 99 out of 100 times, we still end up at the max time. It's hard to walk away, especially if their schedules are crazy.
Is this the max? Oh, sorry. Is this the format that you said?
No, this is a condensed format. It's, mostly the same. I'm gonna make it look a little nicer. I just wanted it to fit on one page.
So are you finding that, do you ever get people say, I really want the $7,500 package and I only want 1 hour of rehearsal? Like, are you finding people wanting to customize these? Is that something that you don't let them do, or? I'm
fine with customizing the packages, but I also know 1 hour of rehearsal dinner coverage is not realistic. And, I'll let them know. It could be one of two things. I could say, look, we can just treat it as 13 hours for the weekend. And if your rehearsal dinner coverage only needs an hour and a half, maybe we could tack on a little bit of extra time on your wedding day. Every once in a while, I'll create a custom, and I'll just say maybe like $8,500 it gives them an hour and a half of rehearsal dinner coverage instead of the full 3 hours. Or maybe I'll just bring it down to an hour and a half at the same price and then give them something else to kind of increase the value. These are really just starting points. I will not go below $5,500, when I'm talking to the client, but everything else is kind of up for discussion. I always make sure that the value remains consistent, so that way if things are added back in later, we get back up to that same price.
Yeah, like if they want the highlight from collection, if they want a teaser, you would figure out what the value of a teaser is.
Or, what I start telling them is that, I'll probably bring them closer. The great thing is you start telling people what the value is of things like the teaser, and then you can really use that to get people to upgrade to higher packages, because you can do that on the base package and it'll bring you this much, but for this much more you get everything. And it really gets easier to, I just use things as kind of like leverage to, you put the full price of the teaser in, but I will do a teaser and a highlight film and probably charge them like $7,000. Or just kind of figure out like. Pretty much, I do that a lot.
What is the strategy for selling the rehearsal?
We're going to talk about in the upsells class.
So if you had a 3-package system instead of 4, would the rehearsal dinner be the middle package or higher package?
Depends what you want. If you don't mind doing them, having it in your middle package is great, because in 2017 is when we really discovered the value of the rehearsal dinner, and we went from doing like 1 or 2 a year to like 2/3 or 3/4 of our weddings, and that was when we really jumped in our price. And I'm going to talk more about that in the next class, but we were able to jump our average price up by over $2,000 by pushing rehearsal dinners. It just depends. Kaye's kind of at a point right now where she wants to do less, because even though it's easy, it's still another day of kind of being away from the baby. And so it's kind of hard as a family, but if you like doing rehearsal dinners and it's not too difficult, I would definitely start pushing it. I'll let them know that it extends their film generally by about a minute, between 1 and 2 minutes. But that's part of what makes these packages. We're able to get higher film lengths with the inclusion of rehearsal dinner. So if it's an add-alone item, a standalone item, I'll say it includes your film by 1 to 2 minutes, and you get a copy of all the toasts.
2 questions. One, what's your typical turnaround for like a wedding? And 2, like online wedding experience.
The typical turnaround time for a wedding teaser, before the baby, we used to be able to get it out in like a week. We didn't promise that, but we were trying to do that to kind of like get on the hype of like the wedding. Nowadays, we try to get it out within like 2 to 3 weeks, tops 4. The quicker you can get it out, the more you can build on the excitement from the event. Now the only thing is, I mean, between Facebook and whatnot, they've kind of changed their algorithms. It's harder to get that out. It used to be a few years ago, you got out a teaser within a week and you get a ton of shares, a ton of engagement. Now you do that, it just feels like nobody's seeing it. The couple sees it and they love it, but it doesn't really capitalize on that hype like you really wanted it to. So I don't think it matters as much. I mean, it'd definitely be interesting to try to, charge extra to promise a certain time length, getting it out within 2 weeks or so. I would definitely experiment with that, but it's kind of where we're at. And then the online wedding experience is our MediaZilla delivery, which is just the online gallery of all their films. I call it online wedding experience because, I don't know, it sounded nice.
Yeah, I've tried asking a couple planners this just to kind of get an idea of what they normally work with, but I'm curious to hear from people like y'all are, obviously charging well with the rent and stuff. What's expected as far as delivery time for the finished, for the finished, assuming that they've, you're paid at the wedding day, it's not.
I mean, I would say, make sure it's in your contract. And if you're kind of running on the cusp, let's say you promise 3 months and you're at 2 months and most of the days and you're not quite done with it. I would definitely, in the past, what I've done is I've gone back to the client and say, look, I feel like we need just a little bit more time to make it more perfect. Is it okay if we just, if they say no, then you just deliver it as is, but they're always going to say yes. I wouldn't say there's any real expectation to have it quicker. But we currently have it at 3 months. We might change it to 6 just to kind of cover our butts a little bit, especially as we have a second child. But I wouldn't go any past 6. I've heard of wedding videographers taking a year. Usually whenever you hear problems, it's people who are delivering it a year later. But, it's part of the communication. If it's in your contract, they should know. You can point it out to them at the time of booking so it's not a surprise. It just, good communication will always make sure that it's never a problem. You always get the emails. So when's it gonna be ready? Your wedding was a week ago.
I have a question about way earlier when you were talking about the 3 reasons people were on low budgets. When you were talking about education. How do you go about when you've raised your prices, comparing yourself? Is it generalities, saying, okay, usually if you're at this price, it's not as much story, it's not as much, or you actually have examples? So you're coming across humbly, but at the same time you're showing the difference between what you offer and that lower price point.
I'm not really going into specifics. I'm just telling them to compare, because I do have clients who are like, I'm comparing you to other people who I know charge like half as much as us. And I'm just generally saying, if you don't see a difference in what we offer compared to them, then by all means book them. But I'm not going into specifics about, I will kind of romanticize, some of the stuff we do and the footage we get and the gear we use, like talk about my drone because I love my drone. But I don't really go into too much specifics. I don't say like we use more storytelling or use way better LUTs than they do, and I don't really talk about that.
I was kind of thinking the only way I could do it is like when I was at this price point in earlier months, this is where I was kind of at now. Like quality of gear, quality experience, professionalism on wedding day, smooth running day. Like that's the things I can offer. I can't speak for them, but you're more like lifting up what you're doing currently.
Definitely go on your strengths. I don't really like to dog other people. The only exception is there are studios who I know of who are literally just hiring random people all the time, and that's why I'll let them know is say, hey, when you hire us, we're at your wedding. I've seen other studios. I don't name them by name, and I'm on their Facebook groups, and I see them saying, hey, we overbooked. We need shooters, And I tell them there's no way they can guarantee any sort of style, they can't guarantee how the output of that film, what it's going to look like. When you book us, you get us. And I make it a selling point.
When you don't sell 4K, is there a physical difference you can show? You can talk about it. What if they want to see it different?
I don't really have people asking for it. I just talk about how it's 4 times the detail. Especially if I'm talking to the bride, I let her know that it means 4 times the detail in her dress. I talk about it future-proofing. It's more of an archival grade. because when the formats change in a few years, having 4K footage is going to make it way more future-proof than full HD footage. Kind of talk about from that angle. I don't show examples. It's usually enough. Usually enough to kind of convince people. I don't want to hold you guys up too much longer. I know we're a little bit overdue for a break. Go out and have lunch. Let's meet back here as close to 2 o'clock as possible. You all have my phone number. If you're going to be late, just kind of let me know that you're on your way. And thanks so much.